everyone, and welcome back to The Point with NavVis. I'm Courtney, and we are joined again by Nate McCall in this episode. If you haven't seen our previous episodes with Nate, feel free to check those out on our channel, and make sure that you're following us and you like this video so that you don't miss out on any of our new posts. So, Nate, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I heard you have some new data to share with, maybe a different kind of angle for this episode.
Yeah, what I thought we could do is maybe switch gears. We'd been in that automotive plant for the last couple of episodes. Discrete manufacturing is definitely one of our target areas where we want to support using our data. But this facility that we have in Munich is actually I believe it was a paint process, so chemical processing type facility. So I thought we could kind of shift things up here a little bit and maybe use this environment for our next talk today.
Yes, I agree. And I think we were just chatting before. You have a cool real world example that you can walk us through so people can get a real idea of how to use these tools in NavVis IVION on a daily basis.
Yeah, so I just created a little point of interest here for another simulated project to kind of talk about how a factory planner or a manufacturing engineer might leverage so a couple of tools and features. The first one being mark and measure, and then crop and download. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So this is just a offload conveyor for this specific site. My assumption here is this was probably a manual process. So a lot of times, folks will take a look at their operations to see where they can be more efficient with their workforce. And one of the very first ways are one of the lean principles that one may leverage to start getting some information about their operations when they're manual is doing what's called spaghetti diagramming. And so I'm going to use a tool that we have in our mark and measure tool set here. So let's just imagine that this conveyor is manned by a couple of associates at this facility. They have certain processes that they have to execute, and one tool that's used to start putting some numbers behind this would be walking paths and diagramming out maybe there's some returnable packaging that's here, so you can really leverage this what's called the polyline feature to understand what the associates are doing when things are running in this factory. And a lot of times industry will have times that are associated with certain walking distances so that you can start to understand how well an associate is being utilized in an environment. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm also seeing here, you can see it in both the 2D and the 3D versions.
Yeah, exactly. So you can get the top-down view here. So let me zoom in a little bit, and you can see the different segments. So you get the total length of the polyline, obviously, but also you get the segments too. So depending on how you have your process steps aligned with the descriptions that the associate's using to tell them what to do, you can get the level of detail that you need in those segments.
Okay, and this is also like a real way that your digital twin can optimize your real world shop floor activities.
Right. So again, when you start talking about balancing work content across different associates to make sure that people are utilized to meet your efficiency targets, you can use this data directly to out of IVION to give you confidence that you're making the right measurements based on what's actually on the shop floor. And again, super powerful tool. A follow-up step to this, a lot of times would be, okay, maybe we can repurpose that person to do something more critical, and we want to automate the cell. So that's kind of what I was thinking we could talk about now.
Yes, definitely. It seemed like in that tool, there were many different kinds of measurements.
Yeah. So just as a really quick refresher, just so that folks maybe that are just joining in this episode understand, we're looking at the panoramic photos that are taken during the reality capture process. But all of these tools that we're discussing today are going to be enabled by the point cloud data that's in the background. So again, all of these dots that you see populating on my screen are the depth measurements that are made as you walk through your facility with NavVis VLX. You don't have to have that view on. Again, repeating some of the content from the previous episodes, but it's just important for people to know that information's back there. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So let's just say, for example, I'm going to automate this offloading process, and I need to install a robot cell. Maybe it doesn't need to be a cell because they're using collaborative robots, but we'll just stick with a robotic cell. So, a lot of times when you're doing some early concept planning, it's really important for you to understand, what's on the shop floor and how much area you're dealing with. So maybe you're writing an equipment specification, or you're just kind of making some concepts here. What you can do is use this tool to verify, do I have enough area for a robot cell, for example. And you can go in and you can even provide additional context here. I can say, hey, this is going to be the robot cell footprint, for example, just to give some visualization context here. So you can name these measurements. I can go in also, and if I want to color code things depending on a color scheme, or just differentiating different features, you can do that as well. So that's again, these are all things that would be helpful in a very early concept phase.
Right. And may I ask, how would you have done this before? Would you have actually had to be there planning, or would you be using just a 2D map, or how did it work for you in the past?
Yeah, I mean, for me historically, I would start with probably a PDF version of a layout that would look a lot like, what you see over here on the secondary view, a top-down view of the site. The challenge is a lot of times the layout documentation isn't kept up to date, right? And it's not comprehensive. So a lot of times, there may be returnable packaging in the area, or parts racks, or elements that just aren't modeled. So yeah, a lot of times it's a trip down to the shop floor with a camera and a tape measure a lot of times, and then PowerPoint and all of those fun tools that we like to abuse.
Absolutely. And use in all different kinds of creative ways. But
yeah, exactly. I don't think I've ever used Microsoft Paint for an engineering project, so I do have that going for me.
There's always opportunities. But.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then so as you kind of progress, with the concept here, maybe you're discussing some ideas with several different equipment suppliers. Maybe you start honing in on, okay, well, maybe I don't need a robot cell, right? Maybe I use a collaborative robot, and maybe that the reach of the robot that you want to install is roughly 6 feet, right? So you can go in and start making notes in the area, again, just kind of keeping with that same that same thought process here. This is robot reach. For example, I can go in and label these measurements. I can go in and maybe I want to make this orange because the robots that I use are orange for some reason. But again, it's just a quick way to go in and use the tools inside of IVION to do these concept evaluations to start honing in on a very detailed equipment specification.
Okay.
And then as things progress, you can share these measurements, for example, and do all kinds of really cool stuff.
Okay, I see. Before I ask my next question, I just want to remind everyone that if you would like to try out NavVis IVION for yourself, you should check out the description below. We've dropped in some links where you can test out a test instance and play with all these tools that Nate has been showing us, as well as learn more about our digital factory solution and how it can do all of the things Nate's just said for your factories. And then with that, you mentioned sharing. So we've talked about that in the past. There's a lot of easy share functions within NavVis IVION. I'm guessing this tool is not exception. How would you share? Because you said, before it was PowerPoint or it was pictures and stuff. But in this case, how would you share this with a team that needs to know?
Yeah, so if I'm interfacing, if I'm a manufacturing engineer interfacing with several equipment suppliers, they don't always have access to this data. You don't want to give them access to your entire facility. So one way that you can do this, and let's just demonstrate this. We talked about this before. I'm just creating, basically based on these measurements, I'm creating a PDF report that I can print and send out as an attachment to an email. And really, all this is it's the panoramic photos that are needed to convey the measurements that I just made. So that's one really quick way to kind of communicate that to an external supplier. But really, from my perspective, I think a much more powerful tool to use would be what we call crop and download. So let me show you what that looks like in a couple of clicks.
New tool alert.
Yeah, right. So again, maybe we've gotten to the point where we're actually creating a machine specification now, and we need to attach context of the factory to the documents for the supplier to be for the supplier to quote. Maybe we're a couple of steps ahead and they've already started design work. Maybe we've already awarded the contract. A lot of times, in the past we've attached maybe those 2D layouts that aren't up to date that you and I were talking about just a minute ago. But a lot of times suppliers want 3-dimensional data. So what I would typically do in this situation using IVION is use this tool, which is called crop and download. And so you're able to go in here and set bounding boxes inside of your instance, so you can adjust these in 2D, just like I'm doing now. And then I can fine tune things now in 3 dimensions. So if I want to make sure that I have this whole cell captured and I want to share this entire area of where these conveyors are with the supplier, I can adjust everything in 3 dimensions. And then what you're able to do is select from several different formats here of point cloud data. So E57 is our native format. It's the latest and greatest, one of the latest and greatest industry standards. But obviously we have some legacy point cloud formats that we support, and some CAD suite specific formats that we can export our data into. So you would go in, decide what format you would want the data. You can give it a name. Project X, and then you're able to select what coordinate system you want this data to reference. And that's important, especially if you do have 3-dimensional CAD data. You can select a site coordinate system, which would then populate the point cloud data in the same georeferenced system that your CAD data is in. So if you wanted to do as built versus as designed comparisons, or if you have supplied CAD data to your equipment supplier in this story that we've created, for example, it would all populate in the right georeferenced area, and then they would be able to start doing their design work in the CAD tool of choice there.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is there's the sharing option with a PDF, which is just maybe a quick email between colleagues to suppliers, this kind of thing. Whereas a crop and download, something like this, you would probably give it to someone who knows these systems very well, would know how to work with this data in third-party software, and it gives a lot more context and a lot more possibilities.
Yep, absolutely. Right. So this data can be, imported directly into, again, all of the major CAD programs that we've ran into that are being leveraged by our customers, whether you're on, Autodesk tools or Bentley Systems, Dassault, Siemens tools. All of this data can be pulled into those CAD programs directly, so that you have actual plant conditions to start the design work for this new project. Okay,
awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions. I think that was a super cool example of how to use this tool in daily life, because we can obviously show everyone how the tools work, but it doesn't really mean much unless you can apply it to your daily life, which I think you can.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing. I think with this type of data and technology, it's advancing quickly. So it's really changing the workflows, that I used 20 years ago, which were very manual. And, the intent is not to replace going to the shop floor per se, but it is to at least give you a good starting point and cut down on some of these manual measurements with tape measures and digital cameras to be able to be more efficient in these planning and manufacturing engineering use cases. So yeah, I see it as being super powerful, and I wish I had it 20 years ago.
Absolutely. And when you could have one click when you used to have 7 different tools, and now it's simple as that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Nate, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, again, for tuning in to The Point. We'll be back again soon with another episode. And make sure you follow us to be notified when that episode is posted. And make sure you leave any comments or questions you have below. We'll be happy to get back to you. And we'll talk to you again soon.